So Martin and I were in here getting ready to go on air, and then I thought, are they trying to tell Simon something?
Yeah, no chair.
I looked there, Martin, and there was no chair for Lord Jordan. And I thought, well, that's a surefire sign that he might not be joining it. But he strolls in, the chair is brought in. A special chair is brought in for you, of course.
Yeah.
And he planks
High chair.
the Royal B-Men down on that chair. Martin and Neil, good morning.
Good morning, Jim. You okay?
I'm good, mate. Good to speak to you. Simon Jordan, you are sitting comfortably. Tell me what you know. I think you know a wee bit more than most people regards this John Textor situation at Crystal Palace. Just to refresh everybody's minds about it, he's under pressure to sell his shares. As for why?
Well, there's this issue around decisive control of two football clubs, isn't there? And the fact that Palace qualified for the Europa League through winning the FA Cup, to some people would have been a surprise. Maybe it wasn't to Parish, maybe it was engineered, who knows, in terms of outcomes. And his other team, Lyon, or one of his other sides, so there was this challenge, and potentially the media were reporting, I think Mike Keegan carried a story that the UEFA were going to kick them out. Palace made representations. Textor is absolutely unequivocal in his position, because I had a long conversation with John about 10 days ago, that he doesn't have decisive control. We've spoken about this before in other situations where Parish has engineered a situation somehow or another. Yeah. He has decisive control. And you've seen that, you saw that previously when there was this argument about loans between football clubs, and the Premier League put forward a motion about clubs that are multi-owned being able to loan players between one another, and the Premier League voted against it. Texas didn't want that vote. Parish did, and voted in favour of the loans being abolished. So you already know that the decisive control influence wasn't really there. And so they made representations to UEFA which were being considered. In the meantime, Textor has decided to sell his shares.
And has managed to do it.
And has taken a haircut to do it.
Oh, really?
Taken a significant haircut.
What are we talking about? 200 million?
200 million euros is what is being reported. I think he made an offer for the club, the whole club, for a lot more than that was worth.
Right.
And from his point of view, I think he has some rancour there. But notwithstanding that, he's going to sell his shareholding, and Palace then will remove any doubt. I actually think they would have found their way through it either way. But I think by selling his shareholding, and it looks like it's going to be to Woody Johnson,
owner of the New York Jets,
then he clears up any concerns, and Crystal Palace go forward.
Here's one for you, Martin. What kind of advert for any prospective club owner are the two Old Trafford outcasts, Alejandro Garnacho and Marcus Rashford? For those who don't know, Garnacho has been criticised by Manchester United fans after posting a picture on social media of himself on holiday in an Aston Villa shirt with Marcus Rashford's name in the back. Rashford later replied to the post writing, "My brother," alongside a heart emoji. And of course we know that Amorim didn't name Garnacho in his 20-man squad for their final game of the season, and now he's out looking for a new club. As well as that, Rashford has been given the same message from Manchester United after a loan spell at Villa ended in injury. Villa are reportedly one of the clubs interested in Garnacho. Rashford himself has said that he's keen to join Barcelona this summer. I'm sure he is, and would like the opportunity to play alongside Lamine Yamal if it presented itself. Rashford reportedly waiting to hear from Barcelona about whether or not it remains of interest to them after talks with his representatives. He was asked in an interview with Spanish YouTuber Javi Ruiz whether he would like one day to play with Yamal. Rashford said, "Yeah, I'd love to. Everyone wants to play with the best. Hopefully we'll see." And he goes on to say, "Spain is nice and it's not too far from home. If I train here for an extended period, it's great because my family can visit. It's just a 3-hour flight. The weather's good here too." So if you're a prospective owner, Martin, and you're looking at Garnacho, or a prospective manager even, and you're looking at Garnacho and you're looking at Rashford, are they talking you into you showing more than just a bit of interest in them?
Well, first of all, you look at their behaviour. I mean, Garnacho was he was obviously disappointed to get left out of the Europa League final, and there was a case for him maybe to start in the game. That's obviously the manager's decision. He didn't play him or brought him on very, very, very late. Then what happened? No, you can be disappointed. I was disappointed not playing in a European Cup final, the first one, and but then his brother goes on to social media. gives a lot of stick. And the one thing you do, just keep family out of it if you can't fight your own battles. But it's the whole attitude, and it's this attitude, and whether it is just them, there's not a chance of you as a manager. Let's say the owner of a football club comes to you as a manager and said, would you be interested in these two lads because you can get them at cut prices in terms of transfer? Maybe the wages might be a different thing. You wouldn't look near it. You genuinely wouldn't look near it because you think to yourself, well, the first time I have to leave them out, what's going to happen? They're going to cause friction again. They're going to have and you need to be, as managers, need to be winning games. Now, these lads here, Rashford went to Aston Villa, started off okay, didn't do phenomenally brilliant. Manchester United don't really want him. Garnacho exactly the same. And you think to yourself, well, why would they want to do this?
Did you ever take a player that has a profile that seems troublesome?
Yes, I took Stan Collymore. Right. But I felt as if I could deal with it, and Collymore wanted to play. I think he wanted to prove something. I had a conversation with him beforehand.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, that,
So then, that being said about Garnacho and this little antics, right? Mm-hmm. If the talent of the player is undeniable, someone's going to buy him.
Okay.
Right? And Rashford too, potentially.
Right.
And this idea that Rashford wants to go to Barcelona, he can go to Barcelona anytime he wants, as long as he adjusts his wage structure, which then we'll see how much he wants to play when he has to adjust his wage structure. But that being said, if you have a conversation with a player, all of this is just window dressing. It's all nonsense, isn't it?
Right. Okay, there is a difference. There's a number of years. You're talking about 25 years difference now, where you could have spoken to a player and you wouldn't have. The only argument he was ever going to have you with is almost directly with you afterwards. You're not going to stick something on social media. Social media is in now, but it's this entitlement. I mean, what on earth would Garnacho be sticking a shirt of Rashford on his back and playing Aston Villa? What would you want to be doing that there?
Because he's at it, isn't he?
What?
Because he's at it.
Yeah,
he's at it, isn't he? He's trying. They're two little kids trying to get a reaction on social media and probably laughing at the reaction that they're getting.
Well, exactly.
Yes.
And if you feel as if that they are two little kids, why would you be bothered with it now? I never felt for 1 minute that Stan Collymore was a kid. I never felt that was his attitude. I thought he just wanted to go and start getting back to being the player that he hoped he could be again. Maybe he'd never reached the same heights as he was at Liverpool or something like that. However, there was a chance at Leicester City for him to resurrect himself. Yep. And I felt as if, I could actually do something. Would I be wildly bothered here about these lads?
But if you were operating now, you would bake into your thinking social media. Because 25 years ago, Stan Collymore might have been on social media doing things that you wouldn't have appreciated, and you'd have judged him by those standards. So now, Martin O'Neill, manager now, would bake in social media, take it at face value, and still do the same thing, potentially have a conversation with his players. The interesting thing about it is, if any owner ever rocked up to a manager on the basis of a troublesome player that could be gotten for cut-free, then they're an idiot. That's an idiotic play. Because it's not the owner's responsibility to do that. B, why would an owner want to make it all simply about, hang on a second, I can get some money saving on this player, but I'm going to inherit a whole raft of problems. I know certain owners would, but that kind of ownership model is a stupid ownership model.
But at least if he asks the manager, do you think that you are capable of dealing with? Listen, we can get
Fair enough.
Absolutely.
Well, Emery saw something in Rashford, didn't he?
Sorry.
Emery saw something and got something out of Rashford.
I think that Aston Villa were still going strongly in the Champions League. There's a possibility, and they brought in players. They brought in Asensio as well too. So they were doing this here, knowing that you're going to have them for a number of months.
But they played him and they dropped Ollie Watkins.
That's true. And absolutely. And Watkins got left out of a very, very important game.
The thing with these two, though, Martin, is if they don't end up at other clubs. They're back at United. Right. What do you do if you're Ruben Amorim?
Exactly.
Do you reintegrate
them? Well, you'll have to, I suppose. There's the whole point. This is what you know. What there's little point in sending them out and letting them train with the third team. I don't think that's anybody's gaining over that there. But it's actually a sit down with the two players and say, "Excuse me, lad. Do you think you might behave yourself? You've got a bit of talent. Both of you've got a bit of talent. Can naturally get you to go past a few players. Rashford used to be able to do that." And you've got a bit of talent. Do you think you might behave yourselves? Do you really want to play for the football club? And I'm looking to get better players in than you boys. I'm looking to get you off board. But if I can't get you off, then you could reintegrate yourself into the side. See if you're good enough to get into my team. That's it. But
do you think they'd listen to you?
Well, isn't that the $64,000 question?
Well, that's
Collymore did, but with these two.
I don't know them well enough. In fact, I don't know them at all.
All these years on,
sense.
Simon, you see the social media.
I'm making some assessments on what they've
manager.
done, their behaviour over the last 2 years.
But that's a skill of management as well. I mean, this is why these managers are paid so much money, because they have to deal with very difficult personalities now that are paid a lot of money, are given lots of autonomy. Now, Rashford has a lever. I'm willing to wager you that Rashford wants to play in the World Cup next year. So the fact that Rashford can get parked and consequenced as a result of it might concentrate his mind as to how flexible he might be in a move. But people will take Rashford. They just don't want to take him for 50 million quid that United may want and 300 grand a week.
Yeah.
They might take him for 50 million quid and 150 grand a week, and then Rashford's got to make a decision. The other kid, well, maybe more difficult to manage, but there's a market for him out there. He's all profit for Man United anyway, because he's an academy project in terms of prospects. So they can bank some money as a result of it. But it's all about the responsibility of management, how to handle it. And also, and another thing that concentrates players' minds is a bit draconian, is if they step out of line, keep finding them, keep whacking them in their pockets, because they don't like that for sure. That concentrates the mind. I know it's a bit one-dimensional, and it's like hitting an acorn with a sledgehammer, but players don't like getting fined, especially if it's weeks and weeks.
Would you find Garnacho for this?
As an owner, yeah, I probably would, yeah. But it depends upon the policy I have in the club and the contract that he has. If he is finable, I'd probably fine him.
Why did I know that would be the end of that sentence?
That might be difficult to find someone who's got a shirt on with somebody else's name.
If he's not
and that'd be very, very difficult. That would be difficult.
I'll put it out there.
It's back. Sorry, Jim. It's back to behaviour. Really, it is. Do you really want to play? Do you want to play? Listen, okay, you've got a bit of a gripe. You've had a gripe now. Let's try and see if we can sort this out. You at Rashford, you've been a really fine player a couple of years ago. You've lost form. You've not been the same player. And Barcelona, there's a fairly decent chance that Barcelona, if they see these sort of things, probably won't want to take you. Simon makes a good point. Yes, somebody is they are an asset if in the sense that if you get somebody for about 30 million and a third of his wages, then you've got a chance. Then it's not a big gamble. Then.
I'll put it out there this morning. Manchester United fans listening this morning, do you want either of these two back or both at all? Garnacho and Rashford, because the clock is ticking. If they don't find a couple of other clubs, they're coming back. A lot to get through this morning. Nicholas Jackson didn't exactly cover himself in glory out at the Club World Cup. Sent off in a matter of 4 minutes. Chelsea striker, of course, in the game against Flamengo. Flamengo came back and won it 3-1. We'll get to that. We're getting to this. Nottingham Forest, a club dear to Martin's heart. Martin O'Neill alongside Simon and myself this morning. Martin O'Neill, a double European Cup winner with Nottingham Forest. And now Nuno Espirito Santo, appointed in December 2023, replacing Steve Cooper, guided the club to safety amongst a points deduction for PSR breaches. His reward, a new 3-year deal at the football club. Martin, before I go any further, did you see that coming on the horizon for Nuno after the season they had last season?
For a new contract, you mean? Well, what do contracts mean these days? I don't know. But I'm not surprised. I think he did really, really well. Obviously, big disappointment towards the end, not getting into the Champions League. But if you were talking about the season that Forest would have had at the start, then you would have taken it all day long. It was a big disappointment for the owner, because he saw on the horizon the Champions League. It didn't happen. But at the end of it all, Nuno has done a fantastic job.
Do you think it's a moment in time for this football club? Do you still think that, Simon?
Honestly, I think it's difficult for it not to be, and that's not to suggest that they can't continue to evolve, because the way that the game is constructed, it makes it remarkably difficult for them, because they can't compete economically. They can't go after the £600 million turnover clubs and have the same wage ratio and have the same spend patterns, because they haven't got the resources. They've got the resources in the fella, but he can't introduce the money because it's not allowed because of the governance. So unless there's going to be a governance change, it's very difficult to see lightning striking twice. Now, I'm the person that tipped Forest to get relegated last year, so it's not much that I have to add in this conversation in terms of value and the perception of Nottingham Forest fans, because they'll say, well, what do you know? But I think it's going to be very, very difficult. I think you'll see other sides regain their poise. I think Tottenham will regain their poise to some extent. I think Man United might regain some of their poise. That means that there's going to be more teams competing at the top end of the division, which makes it more difficult for Nottingham Forest. But I'd like to see them do so.
I mean, 16th, 17th and 7th, 3 years in the top flight. As for Marinakis, he wrote an open letter to the fans 2 years ago. Our vision for the club is clear and unwavering. We're on a path to re-establish Nottingham Forest as a dominant force in English football. On tying Nuno down to this 3-year deal, and you've picked up on this, Simon, I think you did, Martin, as well. Nuno has made a great impact and performed very well during his time with us so far. Those two words at the end, do they stand out for you so far?
Well, I had 19 games with Mr. Marinakis, so I immediately picked up on that. It doesn't really matter. At the end of it all, managers have to win football matches, and well, I'll tell you where I will give him credit. He's put a lot of money into the football club. He's put a lot of money. He's wants to have ambition, obviously for himself, ambition for the football club. When they got promotion, he said that they were going to charge on. And in fairness, this season that they did that. So he has put a lot of money in. He did also said that that they have they've done well with youth team players. Well, I haven't seen that. Ryan Yates was there when I was there at the end of it, so that's a couple of years ago. But the rest of the team has been bought. However, they've bought some really good players. They've had a really good season. I agree with Simon in the sense is at a moment in time. Maybe they missed the boat for the Champions League this season. That's going to be really difficult next year. But I'll get back to the point. I think he does deserve credit for the money that he has put into the football club, and if you've done that, that's a start. And he's tried to put them up there, and also think that the manager's done really well.
I've got an owner's point to put to you, Simon, in a second, but certainly when they won promotion way back 2022, after winning that playoff final at Wembley, Evangelos Marinakis was in a suite, and the watchword was trophies. Trophies. This was Marinakis.
It's a magic moment. We are back, and now we go for trophies. Nothing is impossible for me. If you see what I have done in my life, you see that nothing is impossible.
So what can Nottingham Forest do now that they are back? What do you think?
You have to be patient and see, but be ready for trophies.
And that ambition hasn't gone, has it?
No, you
still
can't.
as strong as ever.
Listen, from the outside looking in, I find him quite unpalatable. Nicholas Randall, who was his chairman, was my lawyer once upon a time, so I know Nicholas, and I'm not suggesting he said anything about his owner, but I've watched him over the years. Marinakis, he's got involved with spitting at officials. He's walked onto football pitches and calls nonsense. He does it in his own country, the teams he owns over there, and he brought Marc Clattenburg in to try and create as much uproar as he possibly could in the refereeing.
He spat in the ground, didn't he? He didn't spit
well, he spat in the direction of an official. Now, all of that to one side, right? This is my personal view. Look at what he has done for Nottingham Forest. It's unarguable. One of my friends, the late Nigel Dougherty, owned it for a long period of time. He was very well heeled. He couldn't get Nottingham Forest promoted. Other people couldn't get Nottingham Forest promoted. They were out of the Premier League for 23 years. A club of that stature, with those achievements, irrespective of whether it was built by Clough and these guys that produced that wonderful team from 77 through onwards, they were a big football club that was outside of the Premier League. So the fact he's gone and done exactly what was prescribed and what he said he was going to do, and then backed it, and then ultimately poured more money in and was criticised beyond all criticism when they went up with Steve Cooper, and he bought hundreds of players and everyone said he didn't know what he was doing, and then he stayed with Cooper when everyone thought he was going to fire Cooper. He's kicked on, they've got into Europe, they've done everything he said they were going to do.
Yeah.
So you have to turn around and say he deserves an immense amount of credit. Now, Nuno Espirito Santo, like all football managers, it's not about what you've done for me, it's what are you going to do for me next.
But you don't think they've become a dominant force in English football?
I would like them to be. I'd like any football club that isn't part of the orthodoxy to be a dominant force, because it changes the nature of the game.
Yeah.
And it evolves and gives everybody a chance, and it makes the dream look better. But unless they're going to change the governance, you tell me how that's going to happen.
I'm not being naughty here, but you've been there and you've worked for Marinakis, Martin. What chance Nuno sees out the 3 years?
Oh well, it's not Nuno. You could mention this too about any football club. You could talk about any club at all. And it's talking about winning football matches. The more games you win, the better chance you have of staying in a job. Really as simple as that. Now, what has happened last season was really great. The fans were delighted. There were a wee bit of disappointment because the Champions League looked there, and then we drop into the Conference League just in the last couple of games of the season. However, they've got a really good chance in that particular league anyway.
They could win that. He's made a rod for his back, Nuno.
They could win. But yeah,
he's made a run for his back.
But that's
Why?
but that's okay.
But it's okay.
But that's absolutely
okay. But it's the sod's law of it all, because ultimately, if you've got an owner that now looks at, well, you've done it before, so you can do it again. Now, everybody in this room really knows that Nottingham Forest players were operating at 100% level. The chance to conversion ratio was out of this world. The centre forward Chris Wood has never had a season like that before, unlikely to have one again like that, where everything he hit for the first half of the season went in the back of the net.
Yeah.
And they were talking about a conversion rate, a shot conversion ratio of like 40%, and everyone else in the league, even Man City, including Erling Haaland, are like 19-20%. So they were operating at a level that was unsustainable.
Yeah.
And so to get that again, and you're going to have people coveting your players.
Yeah.
You know, Gibbs White is going to be coveted by bigger football clubs, and all of this means that Nuno Espirito Santo is rewarded in one hand and judged in the other.
Martin, very briefly, what does a manager prefer? An over-involved owner who's quite larger than life, or an absent one?
For me, the more absent, the better. I would have felt.
He doesn't mean that. He means a sensible one.
I wouldn't want a Mr. Jordan stepping into my changing room just after we've been beaten 2-0 for him to conduct the team talk. You know, I wouldn't have that.
Who would?
But no,
would want that?
but no,
No one would want that.
no. In a serious note, you do it as long as you can converse with the owner and you feel as if what he is saying to you is actually what he means.
Would you have taken a poor view if it had been you and not Nuno when Marinakis came on the pitch at the end?
I wouldn't have been happy with that.
No.
I wouldn't have been happy with that at all. In fact, the chances are I may even have called him a mophead. But I wouldn't have been happy with that, because it looked as if I'm taking the criticism here, regardless of what he meant or didn't mean.
3-year deal for Nuno. Well done to him. We'll see how he goes with that. It's a Monday morning, and we're live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes. Simon's alongside me as we talk Crystal Palace. Simon, Marc Guéhi reportedly prepared to see out the final year of his contract at Palace if the right move doesn't materialise this summer. Guéhi has no intention of signing an extension at Selhurst Park, but if he's to move this summer,
Not very Christian of him, is it?
he wants a club with playing time available, apparently. Newcastle had a bid rejected last summer, as did Tottenham back in January. It's reported Liverpool may now move for Guehi after selling Kwanzaa to Bayer Leverkusen. We'll get to that. I mean, despite recent success on the pitch, will Palace ever be in a position where they can maintain the position of what we have, we hold?
But isn't this, of all clubs that aren't Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, isn't it of all clubs now that the challenge is that the bigger clubs, certainly the legacy clubs, I mean, Liverpool just had Trent Alexander yanked out of their ranks by Real Madrid because the Real Madrid has the lustre to do so. So I don't think it's a poor reflection on Crystal Palace. The fact is that the Palace, it's a terrible thing that you have the vision and everyone else sees the vision when it arrives. All right, so that's a wonderful thing, and that's the downside of being involved in businesses where people covet what you have. It can be a manager. It could be a manager. You can bring a manager and give him a chance. No one else sees the vision, like Kieran McKenna. Give him a chance. And that's why I like Kieran McKenna, because he did the right thing. Stayed with Ipswich, recognised the fact that he did for them and they did for him. And they worked together. And if he was to leave now, I would still be a little bit unhappy for Ipswich, but he would have earned the right, possibly, because he'd given so much back to the club.
Yeah.
In this instance, the characterisation that you're trying to make is not right, because it's the order of events in football, and you're not going to change it.
Is it the order of events, so Martin? This is Crystal Palace, FA Cup winners, a decade in the Premier League, European football to come. That's very appealing, is it not?
Well, but they are an appealing football club. They are a big football club. There's no question about that. They've been a big club since Terry Venables was the manager way back in
Malcolm
the 80s.
Allison,
Talking about
But they can't keep their big players, can they?
But there's lots of teams can't keep their big players. And I'm in total agreement with Simon in this sense. Outside the top six, you've got the capabilities, and I'm talking about the financial capabilities of staying in this league. Every season is a test for the other teams. Every season. There's no such thing as a side who has spent 5 or 6 or 7 years in the league being guaranteed the following year. That, again, it's getting back to the point you mentioned about the underage England sides. Those things just don't follow. It'll be a test for them again next season. And if they don't get off to a good start, it might be a struggle.
Well, your question has validity. Is if Brentford nick Palace's players, if Forest nick Palace's players, and players went, well, I'd rather go play for Forest than I would play for Palace, then you'd have some validity in your conversation. But when you're comparing it to Liverpool and to iconic football clubs, that's not a fair comparison. It's like Palace can take players from Leicester now, because Leicester are in the Championship. Does that Leicester won the Premier League 10 years ago? Does that mean that Leicester are a less sexy club than Palace? It just means that at this moment in time, this club is more successful. If you compare the clubs on an equal footing, and a player chooses to go to a club on an equal footing in the same space, then you start to say that club's got a problem. It's not a very sexy club to be at. But when you're saying Liverpool, when Liverpool come knocking on your door as a top footballer, you go, the Premier League champions, I'll have some of that, thanks very much.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you do with Guéhi?
Sell him. Unless you can tie him down. You're not going to tie him down, are you? I mean,
You don't keep him for one more season.
And get nothing for him. That's the choice. They took the roll of the dice last year. They didn't take Newcastle's money, insofar as Newcastle really offered it, and it was on the nail and all that sort of stuff. And now they're against the clock. So what do you get? You get nothing, and then you've got to go buy a centre-back. So you might as well sell him.
Yeah.
I mean, Glasner won't be thrilled with that, unless you can tie him down, but he's not going to be tied down, is he?
No, he doesn't want to stay. He looks as if he wants to see his contract through. That's his prerogative, absolutely. There's not a problem with that. But again, if you think you can get some money for him when you don't get anything, that is something you have to do. As a manager, you don't really want to lose him. Of course, you're going to go up and speak to the owner. Can you stay put here for another season?
Yeah.
Or ask the player to.
Martin, you know this club well, Leicester City. I mean, a decade on from their title win, still beggars belief that they did it, but they did it, and they did it in style. How much have Leicester lost their way? PSR struggles continue. Leicester set, reportedly, to sack Ruud van Nistelrooy, that'd be a story. Ruud van Nistelrooy after July the 1st, we understand here. They want to avoid firing two bosses in the same PSR year after already axing Steve Cooper to make way for Ruud van Nistelrooy. Where are Leicester at the moment, Martin? This is a sad state of affairs, is it not?
Well, Leicester in the 1990s would have been considered a yo-yo club, getting promotion one year and then dropping down the following year. Then we'd when I went there to the football club, we got promotion and we had a decent run for a number of years. We've got a couple of League Cups and we stayed in the top 10. And up until 2016, I suppose, we would have been considered, or our side would have been considered maybe the best that Leicester had, certainly in the last 30 or 40 years. Anyway, along comes the side in 2016 and wins the league. It's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Now, is that what you're going to be judged against? Unfortunately, yes, you are going to be judged against that. Brendan Rodgers wins the FA Cup as well too. So they've done some things that they hadn't done before. Amazing, absolutely amazing. So for them to fall from grace in the manner in which they've done, it's I have to say it's very poor. It doesn't look good, and it is. Are they? You just talked about Crystal Palace. Are they still an asset?
There's your point.
Absolutely.
They are the leading example of the point that you're making. Every time Leicester was successful, all their best players got pinched. Drinkwater, okay, he didn't make a success at Chelsea, but other players, N'Golo and Kanté, the winger, Riyad Mahrez.
Absolutely.
Boom! As soon as Leicester get a decent player, out they go out of the club, and eventually, obviously with the tragedy that happened at the top, you've got different ownership thought processes, and we saw that now. What did Leicester could have avoided this PSR? They could have avoided these challenges. They could have done as they're told in the Football League and rationed their budgets, and they didn't want to. They wanted to ride roughshod across the governance. They got away with it. They got into the Premier League and they didn't stay up. If they'd have stayed up, we'd be talking about a different set of dynamics now. Potentially,
so they reap what they sow here.
Of course they do. They took a punt. They managed their football. They all know the consequences. Nobody cared about PSR until it started taking away points, did it?
Right.
Nobody cared.
Right.
Financial fine?
Yeah.
I'll have that.
Yeah.
Now it's points. Everybody cares.
Yeah. I mean, you wonder what is there for Ruud van Nistelrooy after this? I mean, when he looks back in that experience at Leicester, Martin, I mean, he's lost 19 of his 27 games in charge. It's been a catastrophic appointment.
Well, again, hindsight is a great thing. You think that he was an interim manager at Manchester United. I know some of his victories were against Leicester City at that time. It seems quite ironic that. But even so, I think in terms of an appointment, if that's what you wanted to do, you thought that he, as been a fantastic player, thinks that he can galvanise the team. It didn't happen. They lost a lot of matches, and eventually, I get back to my old point. I always say you have to win. You have to win. Results are not there. And therefore, if managers like myself lose the jobs because you don't win football games, that's what you're in the game for.
But when you looked at that appointment, there's no effective veracity in the thinking that he would have got the job if it wasn't for those 3 or 4 games that he managed Man United. He would never have gotten the job. So if you're going to base a decision to manage your football club in the Premier League on 4 games that you've seen Man United in, and 2 of them against yourselves when you're a pretty poor side as it happens, it was a poor management appointment, wasn't it?
Well, he had done some coaching, hadn't he?
He'd done right at PSV.
He'd been coaching.
Yeah.
So, Simon, you mentioned it even at the top of the programme, and you certainly didn't mention it before. Sometimes you take a punt on somebody that people had not seen, and you thought, and really, who was I to say that this is not going to be a good appointment? You just don't know. If you do win the football matches, I take your point that you have to do maybe a little bit more homework on someone. But if you think, if you as part of the group that were making that decision think, listen, this boy should be able to. He's got a personality. Get the things going. Listen, all we want to do is just stay up. Yeah. That's you're not asking him to do anything more. Yeah. But when you don't,
because we thought we'd seen nothing. I mean, that Dutch journalist that was a very good journalist that we had over in the Euros,
Marcel van der Kraan.
Yeah, he was adamant that Van Nistelrooy is a top manager, and you'll see it soon enough.
Yeah, yet to see it.